Good morning, good afternoon, Asia Pacific, and good evening to our special guest, Gabrielle, over in Montreal. Gabrielle, do you want to introduce yourself to our viewers?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Lee. And second, I'm Gabriel Lebrecht from Montreal, and I'm the product manager for the Unification group.
Always good to have you on. So today we're going to explore a little bit about what is unification, and more importantly, what it isn't. Then we're going to talk about IoT, and specifically industrial IoT, and how this can help our customers take the power of unification and automation to the next level. So this session is going to last a little under half an hour, but as we progress through, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat on the right hand side of your screen in the Q&A box, and Aaron's in the background fending off any of these questions in real time. But also at the end of the webinar session itself, we're going to have a live 15-minute session, so I'll be there to answer off any questions as a group at the end of the session as well. So please hang back at the end. But without further ado, let's get into this. So what exactly is unification? Here we have a visitor or an employee trying to unsuccessfully gain access to a building, with the associated CCTV video also being displayed on the same screen as the access control event for the operator. So is this unification? Well, some vendors suggest this is actually unified. They have obviously seen the market interest in properly unifying security and information. But really, this is just basic integration, and not really what Genetec strive to bring via unification, which is team efficiency and operator autonomy. Let's be honest, visual verification isn't hard to do anymore, and it's not that transformational anymore either. So it's not really true security unification, because security itself has changed a lot in the last 12 years. And unification has also evolved with the industry. Unification from a pure language perspective means made whole. So 12 years ago, combining video and access control covered a significant part of the tech used in the physical security. Add LPR, alarm panels, and you have a good argument that you've made whole the entire security system. But today, the modern security operations center uses more than 20 technologies to accomplish its mission. From classic sensors and technologies like radar, shot detection, real-time location beacons, and even drones are now used. Add in industry-specific systems, and the number of sensors grows even more. Today, this is what unification really is. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution anymore. It's a big toolbox that allows you to build unique solutions for your customers to deliver unique value. How big is this toolbox? Today, it's over 1,200 integrated solutions from over 500 partner companies that work closely with Genetec and Security Center. So, with all of that, Gabrielle, can you tell us why we're talking about IoT devices?
Well, IoT devices will control the world pretty soon. So a few years back, internet didn't even exist. Today, everything that you touch, everything that you purchase, everything that you have is connected to a network or somewhat the cloud market. As an example, a few years back in cities, if you wanted to know if the garbage can were half full or full, you were basically sending a truck to go and verify, but might as well just pick it up and empty it right away. Today, without wasting any energy, without wasting a truck roll, those sensors will be able to tell us if the garbage can is full, or if the traffic light needs to be replaced or addressed or fixed. So in other words, everything today is having a network connection attached to it, and might as well just take advantage of it. And the more of those devices that goes in the market, people just tend to agree that this is normal life. We need to have those within our own strategy for security as well.
So then, Gabrielle, how do we actually define industrial IoT? We now know that IoT we have at home, like Alexa or our smart TV, is not what we're discussing here today. So what is specifically industrial IoT all about?
So industrial IoT will be more custom devices for every kind of market, or they would be very large devices like fire panel for the entire building. But most importantly, those devices, year after year, as opposed to using their own different protocol, companies have now standardized into specific protocol. There's a few in the market. There's the most common, and of course, that's the one that Genetec picked up to integrate with. But each different protocol's got their unique need. And a protocol being either data going back and forth. Some of them allow you to only read, some will allow you to read and write. As an example, if we use OPC, this protocol is best used for fire panel or best used for building automation, can be used for other devices. But the type of technology and data going in that protocol fits better that need. Another one could be Snmp, which is known in the data center for computer. You can find out how fast or how slow your computer fan is running, how cold or how hot your CPU is. Another one is ASCII, which was well known back in the 90s, mainly RS-232, which have evolved today in TCP. One of the most popular is probably Bacnet, and the reason for that protocol is for lighting and air conditioning. Again, it's the way the data are transferred. Bacnet is basically using a unique ID that we can connect to, and automatically we start getting those data. But those kind of data is fast data that we can get and react automatically. In the IOs and in the inputs and output world, we're using PLC. We're going to use the Modbus protocol. The latest one is HTTP. HTTP is more tended to connect directly to the cloud, so it's the more modern sensor that we see out there. And MQTT, which was mainly used at the beginning in houses, but those devices are finding their way also in the industry. And they will be typically like the water pipe that we can have a sensor on it. And if there's a constant flow of liquid, then we can probably, after half an hour, conclude that there's a water leak. Well, those sensors, they just make it bigger, and now it fits in companies, in industries, so we can now use them within our own use.
So what I'm hearing is that these are all pretty much industry standard protocols, and none of these methods of connecting to these third-party devices or systems are proprietary, similar to OMVIV standards for streaming video, right?
That is correct. So those companies that are building their hardware, those sensors, make just sense to use a standard protocol that everybody can use. And how are we going to use them? Well, we got those different kind or customer that wants to use them their own way.
What is the plus value for the security market in that case? How do we show real value in bringing IoT devices in the security center as a platform?
There's three different categories, at least that we've seen customer using it. The first one is just bringing more information into a single interface. So looking at video and seeing that the door is open, but having the temperature right beside that video may just tell us that, hey, we're okay to go and close the door, or no, it's got to stay open because it's too warm. So it's just extra information, and some customer are actually using it this way. Another way of using it, which is the middle silos here, is bringing the attention to the operator only when it matters. So as opposed to having the operator looking at camera 24/7, what about if we only pick his attention, create an alarm, or bring the video on his screen only when the machinery is starting to work, or when there's a trouble in a production plant, should we have video popping up? So then the operator can do something else and focus on what is required. And lastly, which is my favorite, is when you can use the IoT technology in conjunction with security. For example, access granted in a building. That's only when you should turn on the air conditioning and turn on the light. And when the last person leaves, when they arm the intrusion system, then we can turn them off. So that would help not only on the electricity bill, but this will make sure that those two systems are actually talking to each other. So this brings us to the true power of the IoT integration. If you see those manufacturers flying by at the bottom, we would not be able natively to connect to those devices all at once. Well, the beauty of that IoT integration is you, integrator, you customers can actually use those protocol and the Genetec plugin to connect to those devices on your own. That's why we're going to talk about low code and no code. So if we look at Wikipedia low code, no code definition, it's basically a tool and a software application that will allow developer to design those integration together. What it means is you need to be a software programmer. You need to have an application so you can design an integration. If we make it our own definition of low code, no code, it's basically providing you the tool without requiring computer skill or being a programmer to integrate between software and IoT devices. Really, we have those different protocols in the field that will allow you to just put in temperature over your screen, having different integration, and you can use them all at the same time. So the different protocol we looked at earlier are all the ones supported by Genetec. So whether you're using devices for using OPC protocol, Bacnet, Snmp, Modbus, TCP, HTTP, or MQTT, we're all going to connect to it. The only thing that you're going to need within Genetec is your typical directory, your typical system. We're adding a role called the Iot Plugin, and this Iot Plugin will be requiring what we call regular expression, regex, which is a series of characters. As long as they match the manufacturer that is building that IoT sensor or IoT device, then we'll be start to talk between those two devices. In other words, if you have the right pattern between the plugin and the device, there'll be a communication link. Some protocol allow you to write, some protocol allow you to read, some protocol allow you to do both. If I take, by example, Bacnet, which is, again, the most common one that everybody's using, you'll be requiring an ID, and each device got their own ID on the same network. Then you start having your regex, and suddenly you're receiving either your lightning switches that will tell you if they're on or off, or the temperature automatically providing you any changes, and that's it.
So then, Genetec Sales Engineering and Professional Services could really help our customers not only get creative and plan what's possible at the design stage, but also in the actual deployment and configuration phases of the industrial IoT plugin.
Correct. And the more we do, we're actually going to build a website allowing everybody to see if we already connected to one of those devices. So it's going to be easy for some people to know if we already have an integration with those or not. And we're also thinking about creating somewhat of a forum that people can contribute and have them putting either their question or if they already connected to one of those sensors. Speaking of those sensors.
Exactly. Gabrielle, perhaps we can take a quick look at some real-world devices we've brought into Security Center using the IoT plugin.
Yes, and those didn't take like months or years to integrate. We're talking days here. Typically, it's easier if we can test it ourselves. So some manufacturers sent us device for testing. As an example, Distech Control, what they are using is a Bacnet protocol that allows us to connect to a room controller where we can control the ceiling, the lighting, the sound. So it's just a room controller that you see in some hotels or big manufacturer at the entry of the room. But now you have all of this into Security Center. Another one we did is Circa. So it's basically a emergency intercom. And we would get from an input or directly within the protocol that somebody is making up that call. So what we could do with this, now that we're having that information, is have a PTZ or camera lighting up in front of the operator. So we can see who is actually calling us. And this protocol and this device is also allowing us to control the strobe at the top of that unit. So we could have different camera, we can dispatch patroller. Imagine patroller could be on their mobile and looking at who's calling, talking to them, and then having access and seeing what's going on around them. Another example is Schneider. So it is a Modbus protocol, but it's basically just a PLC that is mainly used in production or chain or offices. Basically input and output that you will connect physically to that device, and those will be then sent to Security Center. I think we have a video showing how this is working in action. So when we talked earlier about having the operator only focusing when something is going on, as opposed to having the operator looking at this machinery or this plant, when it's off all night, what we could do is only when it's turned on or only when there's an issue, should we have an alarm or a pop-up video. So we can focus directly on what's going on and then react to it. That's just an example on how IoT can help us doing a better job or having the operator spending less time on looking at where they don't need to look and focus on what's important. Speaking of what's important, here's a device called RTLS, which stands for Real-Time Location Services. This term is used very often on knowing where people or those devices are within a building. But this company has actually changed the way we're doing RTLS. As opposed to focusing on the exact location of where that person is, it's actually calculating a zone and knowing if that person is in that zone or not. So there's a lot less traffic, and it's basically used to find out if you have somebody without a training in a specific area, or maybe that person is in an area that will have some contamination, so you don't want them to be there. Again, we could have Security Center getting alerted. Another devices is Surya Maxibus, which is a PLC again that we saw earlier, but this one is made for intrusion. So on top of input and output, we can actually receive more data like being an alarm, getting arm or disarm. So on top of just sending us inputs and output, it will send us intrusion information.
What about for the pièce de résistance, Gabriel? Is that even the right pronunciation?
Yes, it is the pièce of résistance. One of my favorite, again, not that I want to do some publicity or have some favorite manufacturer, but the reason it's my favorite is when we're doing demos with IoT. If we switch to the next slide, what we'll see is this unit is actually a sensor the size of a light bulb in the ceiling that you would have, but it's got 29 different things it can report to Security Center. So when it's connected through the Iot plugin, it can report us things like temperature, if there's occupancy, the light or the light level of the room. Of course, it will do gas like carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, but what it can do on top of it is vaping, detecting if somebody is vaping, detecting if somebody is trying to mask the vaping, which is somebody that would put some different perfume in order to mask what they're doing. Well, this unit would actually detect it. And also it's got sound detection. It can detect if you have gunshot, if you have decibel that are going above normal. But again, one of my favorite is keyword detection. It's not going to listen to everything that you're saying, but you can specifically specify in the firmware, I'm looking for SOS or help me or stop it. And as soon as you say those words, it will automatically generate an alarm that will be sent to Security Center. So if we go to the next slide, we'll show you a video on how this was used in the real world. And again, the reason I like it is because it's got so many sensors that it's easy to demonstrate in the software. But the real reason that people should be using devices like this is video is typically allowed in many areas, but there's area that we're not allowed to use them. Bathroom, dress room, hotel room. So perfect unit of not having video, not doing monitoring from a visual standpoint, but doing monitoring from what's going on in this room other than the video. If something is wrong, again, we'll have that video popping up. Here we'll have our famous Genetec actor exiting of the room, vaping. So then we can either have somebody going over there, or we have the evidence that after this alarm, those were the people in this room. So again, very nice unit. Another example is fire panel. As I mentioned earlier, you have different protocol for fire panel. Most of them are OPC or Bacnet. This particular one, without doing any publicity, is a OPC, very popular in Europe and Asia. And this integration was done in less than a day without requiring full-blown of interaction between many developers. Just keep in mind that fire panel, typically based on the country you are, it's one direction only for the data, so you're not allowed to interact with it. So this one was a read only, so you get only the information of what's going on. And we also used some example before, but lighting, being able to control HVAC, the air conditioning, this is typical, mostly used with Bacnet. So you would be able to find out what's the temperature in the room, but you would also be able to control that temperature. Maybe only when people are in the room, or maybe when there's a fire detection, as the panel we just saw earlier, then we want to cut all the ventilation automatically. It's really up to you. So again, is what you're going to do with that data that matters. Speaking on what you can do with it, whatever your IoT device is, a panic button, or it could be an emergency, or it could be a fence that is getting open, or a CPU that is getting higher than normal. Really, what you're going to do on top of bringing the information from one system to another, having it in one interface, being able to trigger video out of it. The real power of what you're going to do is if you can answer to the question, now what? It's nice to have the information into another system, but what are you going to do with that information? And this is really where everybody in this market is different. And the value that you're going to bring is being able to link everything together. Imagine from any of those sensors, whatever you install, because of that integration, you can now have mission control triggering an incident. You could have video verification. You can send that video in the cloud only when you have sensors that told you so. Increase threat level, lock all the doors when something happened, and not related to only access or video, whatever sensor you're using. Dispatch patrollers, send email or notification. So again, the fact that you had that IoT device was already good for the customer. The fact that you are integrating it without involving developer, even better. But what you can do with it, your imagination that you're going to have in play to find out what's going to be the best solution to the customer is really what you are thinking and your own creativity. Speaking on what you can do with it, here's the example that I was mentioning earlier about the Bacnet. So you could have the access control triggering the Bacnet command. Only when somebody swiped in, have access granted, gets on that floor, should we turn on the light and turn on the air conditioning or warming up the room. And you'll see on the top right the time series that will allow you to run report and find out when was the temperature higher or when the temperature was lower, and conduct survey like this. This may explain later on something that you saw or you didn't see. So this is crucial value, but the fact that it's all bringing under the same software allow you to do much more. And this one, again, is my favorite unit. Just in a tennis court, just imagine if it would be. Somebody said, help me, or somebody said SOS. This unit trigger an alarm. And then we have mission control telling you that something is going on, guiding the operator on what needs to be done. And maybe if we ask the operator to dispatch a patroller, well, we'll be sending that patroller exactly where that alarm came from. But while we're having that patroller going on, maybe we want to change the threat level. And maybe we want to try to deter those people having a fight right now. So we want to send an intercom message, but we don't know which language they're speaking. We know that we have some different visitors speaking different language. So we can use the text-to-speech with Sibelia, that while the patroller is on his route, we will have some messages sent to those guys just saying stop it or help is on the way. And maybe we'll try to deter what's going on and stop it right away. And all of this started because of sensors. An IoT sensor that before was not doing anything on its own. But look at the complete solution and what we've made just with integrating through IoT.
So thanks, Gabriel. It's just amazing how much unification has actually come on over the last decade or so. Genetec has always been at the forefront of this when we had that single piece of code in Security Center, which was not only handling the CCTV video, the access control, the LPR, but also the SIP intercom and audio as well. But this has now evolved into so much more. Like we saw at the top of the presentation, a modern control room has over 20 different systems to bring in. Imagine having to write bespoke custom developments for many of these, or even training an operator on 20 different systems and then expecting them to be an expert on all of them. And then trying to manage upgrading all 20 systems annually and retraining operators and admins on any particular new features the upgrades may have introduced. Having everything unified into a central security platform like Security Center and focusing the team on a single user interface like Security Desk just really takes away that complexity. Also, that operational efficiency is improved tenfold or 20-fold in our modern control room with 20 different systems to manage and make sense of. But again, thank you, Gabriel. But before we let you go, perhaps you can give us and our viewers some insight into what the future holds for the Industrial IoT plugin and the roadmap.
Sure, I can do that. So we have a release cycle different than Security Center. We can adapt to any version of Security Center, which is a good thing. Over 5.7, you could use the latest version of IoT. IoT is having a release every 3 to 4 months, so 3 or 4 releases every year. And we're having our next one in February, which will allow you to connect with more tested integration than before. But what's coming up in April is really where I want to focus. We're changing the UI. We're doing a complete relaunch. We had so many people using it. We have comments on how we could make it simpler. So starting around April, May timeframe, we'll have a richer look, an easier look to configure, and a part simplification as well. And lastly, on long term, what we're doing is we're going to add a discovery tool. So we talked about regex before that you need to put in both platforms, so having the manufacturer one and Genetec, and they got to match in order to talk. That discovery tool, not with all the protocol, but the one that we can, Bacnet is one of them, we'll be able to search on the network, and it will automatically detect the Bacnet devices and ask you one by one, do you want to integrate with this one? Do you want to add this one? And so on, without you having to worry about the regex. So it's going to be like a wizard. Do you want to add this device?
Wow. So this is going to be a really exciting year for the Industrial IoT plugin and unification as a whole. Being able to bring that amount of data, devices, and systems into Security Center, into a unified platform quickly and easily without having to involve big and sometimes complex custom solutions is huge. So just seeing the roadmap as well, I'm really excited for what's to come over the next year and onwards with the Industrial IoT plugin as a whole. So all that really leads me to do is thank you again, Gabriel. It's been such a great presentation. We got a lot of insight, and I'm sure the viewers will agree with me that the content and the Industrial IoT plugin is really, really exciting. For the viewers out there, please don't leave us. We've got the live Q&A session straight after this. So start typing your questions in the Q&A box on the right-hand side of the screen. If you haven't already and Aaron hasn't already answered your question, we can cover those off in the live Q&A with myself straight after this. I'll see you then. Gabriel, thank you once again.
See you soon. Stay safe.